Part 1, Chapter 3C of The Adventures of Jimmie Dale. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please go to LibriVox.org. The Adventures of Jimmie Dale by Frank L. Packard. Reading by Maire Rhode. Part 1, The Man in the Case. Chapter 3C, The Mother Lode. Concluded. They passed on along the side of the house and in among the trees. 50 yards or so more, and Jimmie Dale halted. He backed Markel up against a large tree, not over gently. I say, Markel's teeth were going like castanets. You'll oblige me by keeping your mouth shut, observed Jimmie Dale politely, and he whipped the cord of Markel's dressing-gown loose and began to tie the man to the tree. You have many unpleasant characteristics, Markel. Your voice is one of them. Shall I repeat that I do not like you? He stepped to the back of the tree. Pardon me if I draw this uncomfortably tight. I don't think you can reach around to the nut. No? The trunk is too large? Quite so. He stepped around to face Markel again. The man was thoroughly frightened. His face was livid, his jaw sagged weakly, and his eyes followed every movement of the revolver in Jimmie Dale's hand in a sort of miserable fascination. Jimmie Dale smiled unhappily. I am going to do something, Markel, that I should advise no other man to do. I am going to put you on your honor. For the next 15 minutes you are not to utter a sound. Do you understand? Yes, said Markel hoarsely. No, said Jimmie Dale sadly, I don't think you do. Let me be painfully explicit. If you break your vow of silence by so much as a second, then tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after, at my convenience, Markel, you and I will meet again for the last time. There can be no possible misapprehension on your part now, Markel. No, Markel could scarcely chatter out the word. Quite so, said Jimmie Dale in velvet tones. He stood for an instant looking at the other with cool insolence. Then, good night, Markel. And 5 minutes later a great touring car was tearing New Yorkward over the Long Island roads at express speed. It was 1 o'clock in the morning as Jimmie Dale swung the car into a cross street off Lower Broadway and drew up at the curb beside a large office building. He got out, snuggled the cash box under his ulster, went around to the Broadway entrance, glanced up to note that a light burned in a fifth-story window, and entered the building. The hallway was practically in darkness. 1 or 2 incandescents only threw a dim light about. Jimmie Dale stopped for a moment at the foot of the stairs, beside the elevator well, to listen. If the watchman was making rounds, it was in another part of the building Jimmie Dale began to climb. He reached the 5th floor, turned down the corridor, and halted in front of a door, through the ground-glass panel of which a light glowed faintly, as though coming from an inner office beyond. Jimmie Dale drew the black silk mask from his pocket, adjusted it, tried the door, found it unlocked, opened it noiselessly, and stepped inside. Across the room, through another door, half open, the light streamed into the outer office where Jimmie Dale stood. Jimmie Dale stole across the room, crouched by the door to look into the inner office, and his face went suddenly rigid. "Good God!" he whispered. "As bad as that?" But it was a nonchalant Jimmie Dale, to all outward appearances, that, on the instant, stepped unconcernedly over the threshold. An elderly man, white-haired, kindly-faced, kindly-eyed, save now that the face was drawn and haggard, the eyes full of weariness, was standing behind a flat-topped desk, his fingers twitching nervously on a revolver in his hand. He whirled with a startled cry at Jimmie Dale's entrance, and the revolver clattered from his fingers to the floor. "I am afraid," said Jimmie Dale, smiling pleasantly, "that you were going to shoot yourself. Your name is Wilbur, Henry Wilbur, isn't it?" Unmanned, trembling, the other stood and nodded mechanically. "It's really not a nice thing to do," said Jimmie Dale confidentially. "Makes a mess, you see, too." He was pulling off his motor gauntlet, his ulster, his jacket, and having set the cash box on the desk, was rolling back his sleeve as he spoke. "Had a little experience myself this evening." He held out his hand that, with the forearm, was covered with blood. "A little above the wrist, fortunately only a flesh wound. A little memento from a chap named Markel, and—" "Markel!" The word burst quivering from the other's lips. "Yes," said Jimmie Dale imperturbably. "Do you mind if I wash a bit? And could you oblige me with a towel or something that would do for a bandage?" The man seemed dazed. In a subconscious way he walked from the desk to a little cupboard and took out 2 towels. Jimmie Dale stooped while the other's back was turned, picked up the revolver from the floor and slipped it into his trousers pocket. "Markel," said Wilbur again, the same trembling anxiety in his voice, as he handed Jimmie Dale the towels and motioned toward a washstand in the corner of the room. "Did you say Markel? Theodore Markel?" "Yes," said Jimmie Dale, examining his wound critically. "You had trouble? A fight with him? Is he dead?" "No," said Jimmie Dale, smiling a little grimly. "He's pretty badly hurt, though, I imagine, but not in a physical way." "Strange," whispered Wilbur, in a numbed tone to himself, and he went back and sank down in his desk chair. "Strange that you should speak of Markel. Strange that you should have come here tonight." Jimmie Dale did not answer. He glanced now and then at the other as he deftly dressed his wrist. The man seemed on the verge of collapse, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Jimmie Dale swore softly to himself. Wilbur was too old a man to be called upon to stand against the trouble and anxiety that was mirrored in the misery in his face that had brought him to the point of taking his own life. Jimmie Dale put on his coat again, walked over to the desk, and picked up the phone. "If I may?" he inquired courteously, and confided a number to the mouthpiece of the instrument. There was a moment's wait during which Wilbur, in a desperate sort of way, seemed to be trying to rally himself, to piece together a puzzle, as it were. And for the first time he appeared to take a personal interest in the masked figure that leaned against his desk. He kept passing his hands across his eyes, staring at Jimmie Dale. Then Jimmie Dale spoke into the phone. "Morning News Argus office? Mr. Carruthers, please. Thank you." Another wait, then Jimmie Dale's voice changed its pitch and register to a pleasant and natural, though quite unrecognizable bass. "Mr. Carruthers, yes. I thought it might interest you to know that Mr. Theodore Markel purchased a very valuable diamond necklace this afternoon." "Oh, you knew that, did you? Well, so much the better. You'll be all the more keenly interested to know that it is no longer in his possession." "I beg pardon?" "Oh, yes, I quite forgot. This is the Gray Seal speaking. Yes, the Gray Seal. I have just come from Mr. Markel's country house, and if you hurry a man out there you ought to be able to give the public an exclusive bit of news. A scoop, I believe you call it. You see, Mr. Carruthers, I am not ungrateful for, I might say, the eulogistic manner in which the Morning News Argus treated me in that last affair, and I trust I shall be able to do you many more favors. I am deeply in your debt. And oh, yes, tell your reporter not to overlook the detail of Mr. Markel in his pajamas and dressing gown tied to a tree in his park. Mr. Markel might be inclined to be reticent on that point, and it would be a pity to deprive the public of any atmosphere in the story, you know. What? No, I am afraid Mr. Markel's phone is out of order. Yes, and by the way, speaking of phones, Mr. Carruthers, Between gentlemen, I know you will make no effort under the circumstances to discover the number I am calling from. Good night, Mr. Carruthers." Jimmie Dale hung the receiver abruptly on the hook. "You see," said Jimmie Dale, turning to Wilbur, and then he stopped. The man was on his feet, swaying there, his face positively gray. "My God!" Wilbur burst out. "What have you done? 1,000 times better if I had shot myself, as I would have done in another moment if you had not come in. I was only ruined then, I am disgraced now. You have robbed Markel's safe. I am the one man in the world who would have a reason above all others for doing that, and Markel knows it. He will accuse me of it. He can prove I had a motive. I have not been home tonight. Nobody knows I am here. I cannot prove an alibi. What have you done?" "Really," said Jimmie Dale almost plaintively, swinging himself up on the corner of the desk and taking the cash box on his knee, "really, you are alarming yourself unnecessarily. But Wilbur stopped him. "You don't know what you are talking about," Wilbur cried out in a choked way. Then, his voice steadying, he rushed on. "Listen, I am a ruined man, absolutely ruined, and Markel has ruined me. I did not see through his trick until too late. Listen, for years, as a mining engineer, I made a good salary, and I saved it. 2 years ago I had nearly $70,000. It represented my life work. I bought an abandoned mine in Alaska for next to nothing. I was certain it was rich. A man by the name of Thurl, Jason T. Thurl, another mining engineer, a steamer acquaintance, was out there at the time. He was a partner of Markel's, though I didn't know it then. I started to work the mine. It didn't pan out. I dropped nearly every cent. Then I struck a small vein that temporarily recouped me and supplied the necessary funds with which to go ahead for a while. Thurl, who had tried to buy the mine out from under my option in the first place, repeatedly then tried to buy it from me at a ridiculous figure. I refused. He persisted. I refused. I was confident. I knew I had one of the richest properties in Alaska." Wilbur paused. A little row of glistening drops had gathered on his forehead. Jimmie Dale, balancing Markel's cash box on one knee, drummed softly with his fingertips on the cover. "The vein petered out," Wilbur went on, "but I was still confident. I sank all the proceeds of the first strike, and sank them fast, for unaccountable accidents that crippled me both financially and in the progress of the work began to happen." Wilbur flung out his hands impotently. "Oh, it's a long story, too long to tell. Thurl was at the bottom of those accidents. He knew as well as I did that the mine was rich. Better than I did, for that matter, for we discovered before we ran him out of Alaska that he had made secret borings on the property. But what I did not know until a few hours ago was that he had actually uncovered what we uncovered only yesterday, the mother lode. He was driving me as fast as he could into the last ditch for Markel. I didn't know until yesterday that Markel had anything to do with it. I struggled on out there, hoping every day to open a new vein. I raised money on everything I had, except my insurance and the mine, and sank it in the mine. No one out there would advance me anything on a property that looked like a failure, that had once already been abandoned. I have always kept an office here, and I came back east with the idea of raising something on my insurance. Markel, quite by haphazard as I then thought, was introduced to me just before we left San Francisco on our way to New York. On the run across the continent we became very friendly. Naturally, I told him my story. He played sympathetic good fellow and offered to lend me $50,000 on a demand note. I did not want to be involved for a cent more than was necessary, and as I said, I hoped from day to day to make another strike. I refused to take more than $10,000. I remember now that he seemed strangely disappointed." Again Wilbur stopped. He swept the moisture from his forehead, and his fists, clenched, came down upon the desk. You see the game?" There was bitter anger in his voice now. "You see the game? He wanted to get me in deep enough so that I couldn't wriggle out, deeper than 10,000 that I could get at any time on my insurance. He wanted me where I couldn't get away, and he got me. The first 10,000 wasn't enough. I went to him for a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, hoping always that each would be the last. Each time a new note, a demand note for the total amount, was made, canceling the former one. I didn't know his game, didn't suspect it. I blessed God for giving me such a friend. Until this, or rather yesterday afternoon, when I received a telegram from my manager at the mine saying that he had struck what looked like a very rich vein, the mother lode, and—" Wilbur's fist curled until the knuckles were like ivory in their whiteness. "He added in the telegram that Thurl had wired the news of the strike to a man in New York by the name of Markel. Do you see? I hadn't had the telegram 5 minutes when a messenger brought me a letter from Markel curtly informing me that I would have to meet my note tomorrow morning. I can't meet it. He knew I couldn't. With wealth in sight, I'm wiped out. A demand note. A call loan. Do you understand? And with a few months in which to develop the new vein, I could pay it readily. As it is, I default the note. Markel attaches all I have left, which is the mine. The mine is sold to satisfy my indebtedness. Markel buys it illegally, upheld by the law, and acquires, robs me of it, and so," said Jimmie Dale musingly, "you were going to shoot yourself?" Wilbur straightened up, and there was something akin to pathetic grandeur in the set of the old shoulders as they squared back. "Yes," he said in a low voice, "and shall I tell you why? Even if, which is not likely, there was something reverting to me over the purchase price, it would be a paltry thing compared with the mine. I have a wife and children. If I have worked for them all my life, could I stand back now at the last and see them robbed of their inheritance by a black-hearted scoundrel when I could still lift a hand to prevent it? I had one way left. What is my life? I am too old a man to cling to it where they are concerned. I have referred to my insurance several times. I have always carried heavy insurance." He smiled a little curious, mirthless smile. "That has no suicide clause." He swept his hand over the desk, indicating the papers scattered there. "I have worked late tonight getting my affairs in order. My total insurance is $52,000, though I couldn't borrow anywhere near the full amount on it. But at my death, paid in full, it would satisfy the note. My executors, by instruction, would pay the note, and no dollar from the mine, no single grain of gold, not an ounce of quartz, would Markel ever get his hands on, and my wife and children would be saved. That is—" His words ended abruptly, with a little gasp. Jimmie Dale had opened the cash box and was dangling the necklace under the light, a stream of fiery, flashing, sparkling gems. Then Wilbur spoke again, a hard, bitter note in his voice, pointing his hand at the necklace. "But now, on top of everything, you have brought me disgrace, because you broke into his safe tonight. For that, he would and will accuse me. I have heard of you, the Gray Seal. You have done a pitiful night's work in your greed for that thing there. For this?" Jimmie Dale smiled ironically, holding the necklace up. Then he shook his head. "I didn't break into Markel's safe for this. It wouldn't have been worth while. It's only paste." "Paste!" exclaimed Wilbur in a slow way. "Paste," said Jimmie Dale placidly, dropping the necklace back into its case. "Quite in keeping with Markel, isn't it? To make a sensation on the cheap." "But that doesn't change matters," Wilbur cried out sharply, after a numbed instant's pause. "You still broke into the safe, even if you didn't know then that the necklace was paste." "Ah, but you see, I did know then," said Jimmie Dale softly. I am really, you must take my word for it, a very good judge of stones, and I had seen these before." Wilbur stared, bewildered, confused. "Then why what was it that—" "A paper," said Jimmie Dale, with a little chuckle, and produced it from the cash box. It read like this: "On demand. I promise to pay—" "My note!" It came in a great surging cry from Wilbur, and he strained forward to read it. "Of course," said Jimmie Dale. "Of course, your note. Did you think that I had just happened to drop in on you? Now then, see here, you just buck up and smile. There isn't even a possibility of you being accused of the theft. In the first place, Markel saw quite enough of me to know that it wasn't you. Secondly, neither Markel nor anyone else would ever dream that the break was made for anything else but the necklace, with which you have no connection. The papers were in the cash box and were just taken along with it. Don't you see? And besides, the police, with my very good friend Carruthers at their elbows, will see very thoroughly to it that the Gray Seal gets full and ample credit for the crime. But," Jimmie Dale pulled out his watch and yawned under his mask, "it's getting to be an unconscionable hour, and you've still a letter to write." "A letter?" Wilbur's voice was broken, his lips quivering. "To Markel," said Jimmie Dale pleasantly. "Write him in reply to his letter of the afternoon, and post it before you leave here, just as though you had written it at once, promptly on receipt of his. He will still get it on the morning delivery. State that you will take up the note immediately on presentation at whatever bank he chooses to name. That's all. Seeing that he hasn't got it, he can't very well present it, can he? Eventually, having no use for the fake diamonds, I shall return the necklace, together with the papers in his cash box here, including your note." "Eventually," uncomprehendingly, stumblingly, Wilbur repeated the word. "In a month or 2 or 3, as the case may be," explained Jimmie Dale brightly. "Whenever you insert a personal in the News Argus to the effect that the mother lode has given you the cash to meet it." He replaced the note in the cash box, slipped down to his feet from the desk, and then he choked a little. Wilbur, the tears streaming down his face, unable to speak, was holding out his hands to Jimmie Dale. "Good night," said Jimmie Dale hurriedly, and stepped quickly from the room. Halfway down the first flight of stairs he paused. Steps, running after him, sounded along the corridor above, and then Wilbur's voice. "Don't go, not yet," cried the old man. "I don't understand. How did you know? Who told you about the note?" Jimmie Dale did not answer. He went on noiselessly down the stairs. His mask was off now, and his lips curved into a strange little smile. "I wish I knew," said Jimmie Dale wistfully to himself. End of Part 1, Chapter 3C.